welcome to the Paradise.
The design department have really come up trumps. They've recreated in the most beautiful and sensational and kind of and sensual way the designs and the fashions of the late 1800s.
I'm always acutely aware when doing things on this scale just how much preparation has gone into this, and you just have to walk around the set. And the set is huge. It is on a phenomenal scale. You probably do guided tours around it. And you see the work and the craftsmanship that's gone into it, and just walking down the street, and the craftsmanship that's gone into that, and the detail in the writing, in Bill's writing, and the costumes, and the work that goes into the wigs. And so you're looking at an extraordinary amount of work from a huge body of people who are experts in their field.
This is a kind of heaven.
There's not one person who's walked into ladies' wear and just... You kind of have to stand there for about 10 minutes to take everything in, the wallpaper to the chandelier, to the curtains, to... This is a place I'd love to shop in. It's just so beautiful.
I think what's nice about our production is that we're not falling into the cliche of the dark Dickensian kind of everyone was miserable. I mean, if you look at the set design and the costumes and of the supporting artists especially, it's bright, it's light, it's a beautiful multicolored world, and it's just fun to be in.
The detail that's gone into this is, I mean, I'm a layperson and I haven't been involved in it, but I can appreciate it, and it does make it easier because you feel like you're in that world. You know, it's not too much of a transition because you've got the outfit, you've got the surroundings, and you've got the brilliant words, so it just makes my job easier.
You just believe it. You come in and you play, and it's like a giant playground, and you're constantly finding stuff to be doing, and it's, I love it. And there's so many things where I go, I want to take this home with me. Can I have this?
We went out to try and find a location that gave us everything that we needed, and Lambton Park in County Durham was the place that we chose. We knew we had to build a length of street in order that we could put up the shop front you see behind me, and more than that, we knew that we had to dress an interior of the shop. What this place gave us, although it was a gradual evolution, we didn't know at the beginning, was the ability in effect to create what we call a composite set, which means that rather than it all being individual pieces cut off from each other, we've actually been able to create it in such a way that you can literally walk through it from the front door here all the way through, up the stairs, through to the back, as though it was a real location. So this place has turned out to be a bit of a joy.
Emile Zola's novel's 1890s, and we predated it to the 1870s. And basically I started at the RIBA and I looked up the style of architecture of the time, and then we researched as much as we could of the first department stores that were built and what they looked like, and then we looked at a lot of the visuals of Regent Street and how that was all set up, and we actually chose an architectural style that's slightly earlier because we wanted it to feel romantic, and it was all about romance and seducing women. So we went backwards slightly to Georgian Regency, went to the Regent Terraces for the colours and the design of that period.
Melanie, the designer, is absolutely brilliant. And I knew what we were going to get mostly because we discussed it. But when I went up to see it, I had no idea what Melanie was going to do with the entrance hall. And you walk off the street into this palace, and she's done this extraordinarily beautiful stained glass peacock on the back wall. And she tiled the floor. It was in marble. It was absolutely stunning. And it was a shock to me. I didn't know it was going to look like this. It's above my expectations.
And the brilliant thing about this location, which got Mel and I really excited, was that you can, if you build the set here, the street here, then you can literally walk across from Lovett's Dressmakers across the street with all the action and the activity that will go on there, through those double doors, into the Great Hall, along the corridors, up the stairs, up to ladies' wear, up the stairs again, and up into the ladies' bedrooms up there. So within one shot, if we wanted to, which we didn't actually do, but you can have a continuous action, and that's incredibly rare and unusual.
We are the new church.
What a revolutionary idea this department store was. In those days, the women didn't even go out shopping themselves. They would have their servants go out. They'd be chaperoned all the time. So they would come to the houses, to the wealthy houses, they'd be measured up. They wouldn't be seen on the street. Suddenly, this man came up with this idea to put it all under one roof, and not only that, but try to attract these wealthy women into
That was the other difference. Because all the shops worked on tick. Everybody had an account. So he had the cash, which rebought the stock, which meant that they could keep buying stuff and they could buy it cheaply, and then they could outsell everybody else.
Yeah. So he was able to go and buy from abroad, Morocco and India and all that kind of stuff, because he had the cash to spend.
And a perfume I had especially imported from Morocco, which is so intoxicating that one wisp of it, and I find myself utterly hypnotized.
When we chose to come here, we took on a fairly major restoration and refurbishment job. And because it's a listed property, it all has to be done to council planning standards, which essentially means you have to use period materials. So, for example, you can't just use any old plaster when you replaster walls. You have to use Victorian lime-based plaster, which we didn't know. It takes about 3 weeks to dry, unlike modern plasters, which will dry in a day or two. So we made a schedule of works for how long each stage of this process was going to take. And as soon as the place was in good enough state to be replastered, we instantly fell 3 weeks behind when the walls wouldn't dry and they couldn't be papered and they couldn't be painted and so on. So that's just one tiny example of the kind of difficulties that we faced, and there have been a lot, because it was a building that was in a fairly rough state. We had a whole production team. There were about 30 people, different skills working here: carpenters, plasterers, builders, plumbers, electricians. We brought a chap from Malta to create all of the plaster mouldings you can see around the building here. Those were all created here by hand. This wrought iron work was all done in a foundry in Leeds, so on. So work's been put out, and we've brought people here to do specific kinds of work as well. So we've had an army of people here working to create it.
We've got a hierarchy within the store itself, which is almost like a large country house. The front of house is where the shop girls and boys and Murray and Dudley, his right-hand man, where they sell everything. So they sell themselves, they sell the beauty of the store. It's absolutely fantastic. And then you go behind a curtain and a door and you're into the back of house, which is where the girls and boys live, where they eat, where all of the goods come into the store. And they're two very distinct worlds. So it is almost like above stairs and below stairs. So you've got that dynamic, but it's a unique setting. We've never seen it in this setting before.
I'm not sure I could face the world in any dress that was not made by my own seamstress.
Other period dramas that I've worked on and seen doesn't have the richness of this one. Every time I see Elaine in a different costume, it blows me away. I've never seen anything like it. The colours and the texture of just her, and then put her in the setting. It's amazing.
Catherine, our poster girl, is our fashionista. We've taken a certain amount of artistic license with her in making her clothes. She's a bit larger than life. She's the woman that Moray is trying to capture in terms of love and business. She's the woman who has all her clothes made by a dressmaker. She wouldn't dream of buying anything off the peg. That's his target. The first episode, we hired a certain amount and then gradually moved into makes. I mean, there wasn't enough there for us, and it became quite apparent that as the story grew, she had to get bigger and bigger with it. There's a few very beautiful pictures by Tissot, and what he did, which we've used, is that he would use a base costume of cream or white, and then very beautiful colours laid on in that, whether it's pleating, bustles, braiding, and that's something we've followed through with her. In the way that you pick out the shop girls as being a certain colour and a shape, which is the dark, she is always the light, and we've avoided using that cream column shape on anybody else. Again, we go back to Tissot here. This is wonderful, wonderful, and you see it's all thrown to the back. It's all about, this constant thing, are you filming my bustles? Again, keeping her these beautiful light colours, very, very impractical. This woman doesn't get out and walk in the streets. She gets on a coach every time she leaves the house. It's about status with her. So we've reflected, again, Tissot, so we've reflected all these beautiful colours with these beautiful colours on a white background. Fabulous.
Catherine's probably one of the first power dressers. So when she's out and about and in public, she's got her power suit on. So this would be the equivalent of a trouser suit today. And but then when she's at home, her clothes are a bit softer and less of a statement. But she takes pride in the clothes that she's wearing. They enhance her mood or may, help her be the person that she wants to be on that particular day. It is kind of, I suppose, like a peacock with their feathers. This is the ultimate, and Catherine is very much that. And I think the reason she's wearing this dress is she's in the Paradise picking out outfits for the foundlings with Peter Adler, and she's taken quite a shine to Peter Adler. So this is a kind of notice me dress, and I think it kind of does the job.
The costume really helps get in character. If I was just wearing jeans and t-shirt, it'd be quite hard to get like an 1800s boy who works in a shop would have these kind of clothes, and it helps because they're warm and they're tight and snug and they're really well made, so it really helps.
You're Denise, aren't you? I'm Martha. Follow me.
Denise arrives very much as the country girl arriving in the big city, and there is a bit of friction between her and the other shop girls when she first appears. They are seemingly more sophisticated, more worldly. The most important was finding a unifying look for the store, something that reflected the time and also something that reflected Moret's imagination. The girls have again taken very much from a particular painting by Tissot of the shop girl. It's a bit later than our period, so we modified it. But rather than just having a straight black dress, which again he uses, we made waistcoats and bows in Chinese silks. Again, it's to do with Moret and his outward looking.
When you're wearing the costume, you feel incredibly sexy. It's this sort of, I'm showing absolutely no skin, so it's entirely your fault that you're attracted to me. And it's just this wonderful sense of power. But there's a real contrast as well, because you're slightly, you can't move. So you have a sort of helplessness. It's this sort of, I want to be this strong woman, and yet I can't reach further than this. And then you just think, how did they do what they needed to do? I just think that's wonderful, that kind of contradiction. I love it. But also the I don't know if you can see how it changes colour. The kind of, the boleros just, the material on this and this. And there's also this little chain with our pocket watch. And I kind of feel like that's quite dominatrix-y. I feel like that with the black and you're kind of the silhouette and you have your little chain. So there's all those kind of elements that you just don't expect from the era, and I just think it gives you so much to play with. It's thrilling.
Eamon's character, Mr. Moret, is interesting because although he is English, he's northern, small town, he's about looking outwards. He's about bringing in the outside world, bringing in the silks from the Orient, bringing in the birds from the Far East. And there had to be something that reflected that in his costumes. And that's where we went to Germany and got the fabulous fabrics for all his waistcoats and cravats. The one thing that we didn't want to do with him was to dress him as an archetypal Victorian gentleman, an alpha male, which means dressing him very much in black. That's the image we see in most photographs. There had to be something more glamorous about him, for want of a better word. Hence we put him into the browns and then, as I say, the rich textures in his waistcoats, which also makes Lord Glendenning give him a few sideways glances.
Well, it's important that Moret looks good, and he's the face of the Paradise. So he's right on the very edge of
of fashion, and he makes regular visits to Paris and goes around Europe and looks for inspiration all over. So often he'll come back from a trip abroad with a whole new look, and he'll incorporate that not only into his own look but into what he's selling in the store. But of course it helps a huge amount to have such detailed costume, and immediately affects things like the way you move.
First fitting ideas here for Moray, Jonas and Dudley, our three. Initial idea is Moray has to be the one you notice. Moray can't be in black. He really has to have colour. Dudley, grey, works well. And Jonas, the shadowy figure, he's the one that we put into black, although there is a shine in his waistcoat, a lizard-like quality. But the challenge with him was how to make it work as one arm. But that seems to be working between us and the DOP. Beautiful, beautiful, glamorous. There's almost a touch of rock and roll about him with Moray. He's the man your eye goes to. He really is glamorous.
No ideas, no questions, no what-ifs. Just willing hands and an empty mind.
When we're in our corsets, the cast and I have talked about the fact that you can't quite take the breath you want to take, which means that when you have an opinion, you have to prepare yourself to say it. And I feel like that in those days, the gentlemen would be sitting there with their cigars and there'd be opining and having these discussions. And the women would be... and you can totally understand why they didn't get involved in discussions, because you just didn't have the lung power.
For a female in this period, there's something very interesting about being really constrained, especially for someone like Clara, that can be very fiery and feisty. She's not the kind of demure, elegant, well-mannered young lady at all, and she doesn't really want to be. She doesn't care. But you're still hugely constrained by these. It's wonderful. Oh, we have bustles as well, which initially takes a bit of getting used to because you've suddenly got very large behind. So we all have this, which is our uniform for the shop floor, and then we have one other outfit for going out on the tour.
Clara, when Clara goes out, Clara being the saucy minx, her clothes, whereas we have here just very simple cottons, country girl dresses. Clara's a bit harder, they're satins, they're shiny, they're more brittle, much lower neck here for her. Reflects her character. Lovely Miss Audrey in her shop worker's uniform. One step up from the black is purple. We have a few of these. She's built like a battleship. It's all armour for her, absolute armour. Can't get near her. So when we do the scenes at night, we take away all the underpinnings, all the bustles, all the bum pads, and we break her down into a rather fragile figure, which again works very well for her.
This is Miss Audrey's uniform, and it's my only costume. I have a nightgown, I have a nightcap, I have a cape for going out, and a hat, and this dress, and that's all I have.
This painting, I mean, it's fairly minor, but what's so lovely about this is when we came to do the Glendenning House staff, obviously, again, you think of household staff at this time being black and white, but we couldn't do that, obviously, because it would be too close to the shop girls, so we had to find a way of doing a household maid, what have you, and keeping her out of black. And this was just a painting we came across. So I think it's called The Recruitment. And all these girls here who are maids, a little bit earlier than our time, but great reference, are all in pastel colours. So our Glendenning household staff were in pastel colours. We don't have a workroom. We're making actually on the trucks, and behind me is Gail, who's making principal toiles at the moment that will fit later on Denise character and also on Miss Audrey. We have another set of girls over there working on Catherine's dresses. Sometimes every corner is filled with somebody making something.
In the Victorian times, photography was very new and a very popular thing for people to have done in all price brackets, really, even, lower middle, upper class, was to have a calling card made of their photographs, of which, some of these are carte de visite. Our dates that we were looking at were 1870, and so just scanned hundreds of images of 1870, and from that we've got different looks, so that the working class girls have very minimal hairstyles. The shop girls have slightly better hairstyles. They've done them each other. The middle-class women are a little bit more elaborate, and the upper-class women have much more elaborate hair because their hair would have been done by their servants. So the equivalent of going to a top hairdresser today, really. We wanted there to be lots of different looks of hairstyles so that sometimes when you look at a period programme, everybody has the same hairstyle. And I just thought that that's a bit boring because in real life, people look from different periods of time, you know, so even today you'll get people who've got, you know, 60s, 70s, 80s hairstyle, often when their heyday was, they're stuck in a bit of a time warp. And I think that's the same in any age, you know, so if you've got 1870 Victorian, you're going to have people with an earlier hairstyle or a style that suits them. I mean, one of the briefs that we had on this, particularly popular at this period of time, was a very curly, tight fringe, which looks a little bit unflattering, whatever you want. And we decided strongly, the production team bosses hated that style and really didn't want that kind of chintzy, frilly little hairstyle, so we avoided those completely.
I hope that once he hears my plans, he will see that it is good business.
I had one day between wrapping on the previous production and my first day on this, so I had a bit of stubble for the last project that I was in, so there wasn't a huge amount we could do unless we got the fake beard out. And we didn't want him to be this sort of raggedy Victorian bohemian. He has to be well turned out, he has to look well groomed. So yeah, I think we've actually tamed it down. My initial idea was just to have a big fat brush, moustache and some mad hairdo, but I'm quite happy with the way it's turned out.
In the Victorian times, the men were had a lot of facial hair, and we all felt that we didn't want to go down that road, so we wanted to put a modern spin on it. And they thought that the younger people would look at it and just go, oh, there's great big mutton chops and beards, and not get involved with the characters. So if we minimised that, then they would be more believable to across the age range. So with Denise, she starts out as this country girl who comes up unsophisticated, and there was a line in the first script where she eventually gets a job in the shop, where Miss Audrey says to her, you know, you've got to tie up those rat's tails, it doesn't look right. So that gave us the opening that she would come with an unsophisticated, hair down, country girl look, and then slowly it would evolve that she would become more sophisticated and her hairstyles would evolve in more updos as the storyline developed. Then with Catherine, she has sort of really only two looks. She has a day look, which is always an elaborate up style of some sort, and then she has an evening look which is even more elaborate with, you know, jewellery and things put in her hair, and it's all her own hair, so she's got a huge amount of Irish girl, lovely long hair, thick hair, you know, so it gives us a lot to play with.
It's loud, Polly.
When it came to the girls on the shop floor, they would all have updos, but we went for simpler styles. Unfortunately, we were doing a scene the other day where the three of them were meant to be doing a sort of Sex and the City girly scene together type thing where they're washing each other's hair. And I said, well, we can't do that because only one of the girl has long hair. If you wash the wig, you'll see the separation, and the other girl, when her hair's down, is just a false piece and hair this length. So we adapted it that one of the girls with long hair could wash her hair and the other two were pretending to plait. Because most people didn't wear makeup in those days, they're wearing makeup to look like they're not wearing makeup, and we've had to go down the route of sourcing things that will give the impression of shape, for instance, on their eyes, but look as if it's natural skin tones. Women in those days would use creams on their face, but that would just be to moisturise, and generally only the wealthy women would use that. Big rich families had apothecaries in their house, and their servants would make up lotions and potions, and some of those things they would make up would be like a rouge or a lip stain for them, which, as I say, they would make out of things like cochineal or rhubarb, raspberries, anything like that. And they would use it to stain their chips and leaps, lips and cheeks. But in general, makeup wasn't available. Women would pinch their cheeks to get a bit of colour in them. And don't forget, in the high society houses of the time, they were really cold, and the women would sit by the fire and get nice rosy cheeks anyway.
I've had etiquette classes before with this period. There are professionals in etiquette of the time, so it just gives you an idea of the boundaries you need to have in the because you can get carried away with the dialogue and making a moment more dramatic by doing certain gestures, but at the same time you've got to be true to the period as well, because there are a lot of people who know period inside out, and they will kind of pull you up on it. Just walking through a door, who goes first, getting up, sitting up, and if a lady sits up, you stand up, and the level of contact as well, you know, and how much that means. If you need to console somebody in a scene, then a hand on the shoulder it could be too much. You know, sometimes it is literally just you just need a look in the eye and a nod, and that can be as much as a hug in modern times. So it's little things like that you kind of take for granted today.
I like to think bad of him because he's made something of himself. I've actually played a Geordie before, so I drilled the accent for that. And I hadn't had a dialect coach, I just listened to the accent. I can't lie, I did listen to a lot of Cheryl. But there's a great website I use called the International Dialects of English Archives. So I went on that and listened to that over and over again and just drilled it. And then I went into the audition for this and they said, can you make Clara Geordie? And I was like, of course, not a problem. Don't ever mention his wife in the Paradise, do you understand? It's forbidden. I find when I'm doing an accent when I'm filming, I keep it up throughout the day. So earlier on when I was talking out of being Geordie, you know, going around just getting me lunch and all that, because I want to keep it up so that I don't have to think about it when I'm doing it in a scene, because then it just flows. So yeah, Geordie's dead easy now. Have I ever been a sales girl? I certainly have. I'm a good sales girl as well. So there's kind of a running joke that I will be an expert folder. I mean, I sell things like, the usual cosmetics, fragrance, all of that stuff. I can't lie, I think every actor, whatever job you do in between jobs, just feels utterly soul-destroying. But if you told me that when I was on a shop floor with absolutely excruciating feet, sore back, long hours, low pay, selling fragrances overpriced, when you can barely make rent, that you'd suddenly be in a place like this, drawing on all that, I'd have gone, oh, okay.
I was attracted to the script and the role because it was going to be fun for me, because Denise is so strong. For the audience watching, hopefully they relate to her and they go, wow, look at that strength of character and that determination. And actually that's something that I kind of, as myself, as Joanna, I want to emulate. I think that is going to get her places in life. And I see that and I go, wow, that ambition. And it's made me more ambitious.